Hi. I asked in my story today if any of y'all had heard of the Lost Tribe of Appalachia. And while a few of you have, most of you hadn't. So let's talk about this group of individuals that called Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia their home, historically. The Melungeons, or the Lost Tribe of Appalachia, are a group of triracial people who mostly identify by their family names. So why are they called the Lost Tribe of Appalachia? That's a twofold answer. The first one is no one really knows where Melungeons come from, and the second one is not a lot of people know that they are Melungeon even today. Since the mid-19th century, historians have thought that Melungeons were the product of intermarriage between Anglo-Celtic Americans, Native Americans, and free African Americans along the American western frontier. If you had asked a Melungeon in 1890 how they defined themselves, they would cite that they are of Portuguese descent. They hoped this claim would help them deflect the discrimination they faced in the American South. Come back for part 2 to learn more. Welcome back to part 2 of the Lost Tribe of Appalachia. Who the heck are the Melungeon people? If you haven't seen part 1, it'll be extremely helpful, so go back and watch it. There's a lot of folklore surrounding the Melungeon people. It's been said that perhaps they are descended from the lost colony of Roanoke Island, or maybe they're one of the lost tribes of Israel. They could be descendants from deserters of one of Hernando de Soto's expeditions, or descendants of shipwrecked pirates. But on all of these scenarios, they suggest overseas visitors that intermarried with Native Americans and then moved inland. It wasn't until recently, with the advances in genealogy and genetics, that scientists were able to confirm a few things about the Melungeons. Genetic studies have shown that Melungeons share genetic traits with populations in the Mediterranean, South Asia, and Middle East, as well as with Northern Europeans, Native Americans, and African Americans. Come back for part 3 to learn more about the Lost Tribe of Appalachia. Part 3 of the Lost Tribe of Appalachia, the Melungeon people. Because of their diverse genetic background, the Melungeon people faced a lot of discrimination in the American South. In fact, the term Melungeon is historically a disparaging term for people of mixed race or lower socioeconomic status. On U.S. censuses, Melungeon people were described as FPC, or Free People of Color. Because of the racial discrimination, many of the Melungeon families stayed isolated for hundreds of years in Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina. It wasn't until the early 20th century that Melungeon people came down from the hills and began to quote-unquote marry white. In the 1960s, during the American Civil Rights Movement, Melungeon people began to take back the word as a form of pride. Come back for part 4. Welcome back to part 4, the Lost Tribe of Appalachia. So how do you tell if you're Melungeon? Well, it's a mixture of both genetics and genealogical research. There's physical markers like the shapes of eyes, the back of teeth, and the back of the head that help researchers determine if someone is likely to have Melungeon ancestry. There's no Melungeon gene, and it wasn't until the 1960s that Melungeons identified willingly as Melungeon. So there's not a whole lot of records of this unique and isolated group of people. But there are some famous Melungeons in American history. You might recognize this guy. Or this guy? Maybe him too. That's right. Abe Lincoln, Elvis Presley, and George Clooney can all trace their ancestry back to known Melungeon families. This unique and diverse group of individuals helped shape the American South. And I'm proud to say that I can trace my ancestry both back to the Collins and the Carter families of Hancock County, Tennessee.